again. I'm Trudy, the founder of InsightLA, and welcoming you to our Sunday morning sitting group. I thought I would be here last week, and my friend Justine subbed for me kind of at the last minute when I remembered that I had a writing commitment. And these writing workshops and commitments are increasingly taking up a lot of my time because I have to learn how. Writing a book, it's actually kind of, if you haven't been writing all your life, there's just so much to learn, And I'm loving studying something new and learning it. And I want to just thank you for your patience, and I'm sorry that I wasn't there last week. And so this week, for those of you who may be new to InsightLA, the time is divided basically into thirds, where we meditate for about a half an hour. Then we, sorry, I'm distracted. Somebody's printing something. We meditate for half an hour, then have some teachings, and then some conversation with each other. And I always look forward to that part a lot. So I do some guidance with the meditation. You're free to do whatever practice is your own practice, and you don't need to necessarily listen to what I'm saying. I just will offer a few words to help us stay connected, which I've found is a bit harder to do on Zoom than in person, even though the Zoom gives us so much freedom to gather in ways that we never could in person too. So I'm speaking to you from the lands of the Coast Miwok tribes of Marin County. I'm at the house that Jack and I rent here in San Rafael, and it's not really misty or foggy. It's that kind of morning when the maritime layer just hangs very low, and I can see, birds kind of circling and then disappearing up into it. It's quite beautiful. And being from the East Coast for most of my life, I really have missed cloudy, overcast days here in California. So I'm very happy today, and I hope you are too. So I want to invite you now to sit together and to just put your body in whatever framework will allow you to sit still for the time. And that might be lying down, it might be standing up. I've had a flare up of an few years old injury where I broke my back. And so I can't really sit in a chair for very long right now. So I'll show you my framework this morning is this. I'm sitting on an exercise ball. And so really, whatever you need to do. And for me, what I need to do is I have to sort of like move around a little like this. So if you see me looking a little unstable, don't worry. It's that I'm just tending my back, which does not love immobility. Okay. So let's sit together. I would ring the bell, but it's only when I get in front of you with the bell that I remember I never did what Jim told me to do to make the bell. Thank you, Jim. Could you do it one more time because I was still talking? Thank you. So taking a deep breath in and breathing out. Relaxing. And one more time, breathing in and out. Just breathing in the aliveness of this moment. And as you breathe out, releasing tension or any nervousness that you may feel in the body. Just letting it go. letting it just kind of vanish into space and dissolve like the out breath. This morning's meditation will practice just very simply different ways of letting go, beginning with letting go of just moving around. Getting up when we think of it, fidgeting when there's a little itch, just renouncing or relinquishing or letting go of moving around and being quiet, letting the body be still. And if, like me, you need to move your body this morning, do it very slowly, very gently, very mindfully. And just letting go of any need to control the breath, if that's your subject of meditation. If you're attending to sound as it appears and disappears, well, the lack of control is evident. And the same with sensations in the body. They just come and go, as does the breath when we leave it alone. And as the body keeps still, the mind quiets down. And if the mind is active and super busy or reactive, whatever's happening this morning, it may not want to quiet down or calm down. It may want to wander around. But remember, all who wander are not lost. So when you are aware of the wandering, you can let go of the attempt to control this too. Each one of you, each one of us is aware of being aware. Aware of what's happening in the body, what's happening in the mind, how it is with the heart. And noticing the kind of attention that you're giving to experience. We're paying attention with mindfulness. But is that attention kind or critical? Just noticing. And just noticing any thoughts like, oh, I should do this more often. Or my thoughts are just running wild. These are more subtle things. Seeing if you can let go of any even subtle kind of ill will or should. Letting go into the ease of being free to be exactly as you are. Without judgment, in this particular moment of your whole life. And just for now, letting go of any rules that you impose upon yourself. Have to be this way, have to do it that way. Just letting all that go, just for now. And stepping back into awareness, just moving the body back ever so slightly. And feeling the pleasure of just letting it be. The breath, the whole range of experience, just letting it be as it is. and feeling the pleasure of the moments of full presence and attention. And if they are few or far between, makes them even more welcome and appreciated. Stillness is a pleasure. And now when you're ready, just gently opening your eyes if they've been closed. Looking up if you've been looking down. Making sure you're muted. Again, just for now, making sure you're muted. This morning I have lots to share with you, and maybe more than is possible to share, in which case it will spill over into next week. But I had an experience that was profound, and I want to share some of what I learned through it, because I feel like it's very relevant to this past week. The nations getting together at COP26 and why they are having to do that, and all the things that stem from that. And so the experience was of watching a movie, a documentary that was called Aware. It has a subtitle that's long and I forgot it, but it's basically about the intersection of science and what I would call and consciousness studies in consciousness. Because even though, as I said earlier, everyone is aware that they're aware, consciousness is still a complete mystery. And those who study it acknowledge that this is a mystery that it probably isn't going to be elucidated in their lifetime, and maybe not solved for generations, if ever. But what we know now is we know that we're knowing, or we are willing to enter the unknown. We know that we're not knowing. And either way, it's just a mystery, And so this documentary, I'll call it, it's a documentary if I say movie, it was a composite of Roland Griffith's work at Johns Hopkins on the use of psychedelics, especially psilocybin, to heal depression or help people who are terrified at the end of life, or have diagnosis, or just various ways that they're discovering the psilocybin can be healing for people through this research. And then another researcher named Monica Leone, and Monica is a researcher at the Biological Intelligence Lab at an extension of the University of Sydney in Western Australia. And her research focuses on plant cognition, what plants know, how they communicate. And then the voice of an indigenous woman speaking of her relationship to the plants and to all life and the sacredness of all life. And then zoom back to the person in the MRI who's had the psilocybin and they're doing the experiments. I mean, it was a really interesting composite. And I don't know if it's generally available yet. I don't know. Did any of you see it? Because Tricycle hosted a panel about it that Jack was on, which is how I happened to see it. And anyway, I'll find out if I can send it to you and you can see it. But I wanted to share some of the things that just struck me the most. They were the most sort of mind-blowing. And the first one, I mean, I've been very aware of the field of psychedelic research and what's being done. And I was fortunate to be present when Roland Griffith made a pilgrimage to visit Ram Dass toward the end of Ram Dass's life and basically thank him for his work in the field. It just happened that Jack and I were also visiting. We were there, staying there at that time. And so that was an honor. But it was really Monica, her work that blew my mind. And because she explained very carefully her experiments in a way that anybody could understand. And what she has pioneered is a field called plant bioacoustics. I have to read this part. It's a newly emerged field of plant communication. Plants produce sound waves in the lower end of the audio range, as well as an overabundance of ultrasonic sounds. By capturing the signals emitted by plants under different environmental conditions, I'm exploring the ecological significance of these sounds to communication among plants and between plants and other organisms. And it's very interesting because so the experiment that she explained to us was a very simple one, two simple ones. One was one where she took a little pea shoot and basically gave it two places it could grow down. And on one place there was water at the bottom. It was like an inverted Y, right? Here there's water on the bottom and here not. And of course the pea grew that way toward the water. And then she had a tiny little tiny little microphone and put water sounds in it, but there was no water. So if the pea was just using its moisture sense, to go down there, that wouldn't work. But instead, with the sound of the water, the pea also grew toward the sound, which said it was hearing that sound. And knew that it was the sound of water. And then the other experiment that I can explain to you is like with Pavlov's dog, where the bell, the dog learned to salivate when heard the sound of the bell because the bell was rung each time it was fed. And that happened over and over and over until finally the dog didn't need to be fed. As soon as it heard the bell, it would salivate. So she did this with plants where she put a little fan. That would be the stimulation, a tiny little fan by the pea shoot. And then the reward wasn't, obviously dog food. The reward was light because the plant would bend toward the light. And she did it over and over again, the little fan and then the light, the plant bend toward the light until finally she stopped providing the light. And it was just the little fan and the pea still bent that way. It learned that little sprout of green had the capacity to learn. It gives me shivers even when I tell you this, because she's discovering the sentience of plants that indigenous people have known for a long time. I have a friend who was the executive director at EBMC, the East Bay Meditation Center, and an indigenous woman who had that kind of relationship with plants where they would talk to her and she could receive information about which ones were medicinal or healing. And she had learned that from her teacher in Mexico. So this is a pretty plant cognition. Those are two words we don't usually hear together. Cognition being, how you know and your ability to think and so forth. It's a new and exciting field of research. And actually, not only is it going to redefine some of the boundaries that we make between plants and animals. Well, animals, yes, they're sentient and they can learn. We know this. That's been known for decades. But plants, if plants can also gather information about their environment and share it with each other, that kind of asks us to look at plant ethics, how we treat plants. For example, the indigenous woman was collecting tobacco and she said, she tells them she's going to do it. I mean, they know because she does it every morning, but she does it in the morning so the plant has time to heal with the light, through the light of the day before nighttime. So many beautiful, respectful. It made me think of how many times I just, snap a flower off of a branch, or it just brings lots of questions for how we are mindful in our behavior toward plants. But I don't want to get too heavy on that because I'm married to somebody who guaranteed if you give him a plant, I won't say it'll be murdered. It will just languish and die. But if you think of plants, suddenly think of plants as active agents in a social environment of each other. Do you know what I mean? It's just incredible, isn't it? And yet I've been teaching for years about Suzanne Zamard's researcher at the University of British Columbia on forests and the wood wide web, the way that I think by now this is pretty widely known about, the way that the roots of trees are surrounded by these branching networks of fungi that it's like neurons underground, and how they can communicate with each other, like which tree might need some support because it's weakened or sick, and then sending that tree more sugars, or research that they've done that shows that trees, and I've talked about this, some of you have heard me talk about this because it also is very mind-blowing in terms of our preconceptions and our fixed ideas about the way the world is. This is requiring a freedom of imagination, really, that we can start to include, vegetable life in as conscious parts of our Sangha here on Earth. Anyway, she showed that a tree recognizes its own children, the ones that came from its seeds, and will prioritize care for those little seedlings when necessary over other seedlings or other trees who might need help. And then when those are taken care of, will help the other trees. One of the things that she said, laughingly, but she said, we've always thought that you needed a brain and neurons to have this kind of consciousness. Plants do not have a brain or neurons. They just don't. So, but they are clearly conscious. And she said, what if it turns out they're actually more conscious than we are? That's actually not hard to imagine, is it, after we lived through that week of COP26? and really, anyway, I think that I share some of this with you because I think we're all looking through our own eyes, trying to make sense of the world we inhabit. Like, what is this? What are we in it? Where do we belong? What is our path? What is our true calling? We're all trying to make sense of this in our lives in our various ways. And the fact that we are all trying to make sense of the situation in our own ways, I just think it brings a lot of compassion that we can have for each one of us, for each other. And I think of the plants and the animals the same way. We don't know what kind of sense they need to make of their lives. Their direction or their purpose seems to be much simpler and clearer than ours as humans. And that brings me to the quote, the thing I said during the meditation, asking us to be tolerant of our wandering minds and not bear ill will toward ourselves for this just natural function of the default network in our brains. This is not all who wander are lost. Of course, some of you will recognize that as a quote from Tolkien. And the full quote says, "All that is gold does not glitter. Not all who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost." So those old deep roots, those I feel are those old deep roots. What are they? What are they in your life? For me, they are the teachings about integrity, the teachings about ethical living, the teachings that are also about, we could think of it as the Bodhisattva Path, which I sometimes define as the ability to delay gratification. The idea that we sometimes set aside our own wishes or our own convenience, or, in order to attend to somebody or be of service in the world. And even that that paying attention, that mindfulness that is paying attention. Mary Oliver said, paying attention is a form of devotion. I think that was the quote. No, I knew that didn't sound like Mary Oliver. Attention is the beginning of devotion, is what she said. And how can we be devoted to learning about life, whether it's learning about plants or animals or writing or whatever, learning about meditation, learning about these teachings of about consciousness, whatever it is we're excited about learning, we know, how can we be devoted to life itself if we're not paying attention? I printed out a poem that I want to read to you, and that's what I'm actually looking for right now, but I don't see it. This has happened before, so we won't have that poem. I'll read it to you next week. But I think that quote about the old deep roots, the strong old deep roots not reached by frost, is you can wander, I can wander and not be lost, because I know I have a deep purpose in this life, which is, I would frame it in metaphors of awakening or rebirth, or, to wake up and to see the world with fresh eyes, and not to be so bound by the way that I have habitually imagined it to be. I found this quote that I don't know whose it is, but I loved it. The soul has an absolute and unforgiving need for regular excursions into enchantment. And the freedom of being able to reimagine our world, or reimagine our relationships to each other, the permission to move out of these constructed, fixed ideas and rules that we've been taught. That's part of what meditation can bring. It's part of the liberation of meditation. And when I'm using we a lot, but it's really you and I, and not a we that assumes sameness of each other, because we are each on our own individual paths. And obviously we have what we love in this practice and we share it in common, but each person's experience, if we could do what Monica did and attach a little tiny acoustic microphone to everybody's brain, even if we couldn't hear the content of the thoughts, the rhythm would be different, the volume would be different, the speed would be different. My mind moves really fast. And I remember I was having lots of conflict with my mother at one point. And I talked to my Soto Zen Japanese teacher, Kobuchino, about it. And he said, oh, yes, the thing is, your mind moves so fast and your mother's mind moves so fast. And I thought, what an interesting description of my relationship with her, that we're both just like, you know, maybe a little on edge, ready to jump to conclusions, you know, with that fast moving mind. But it was so free from any kind of judgment, right? Just a kind of very, very liberating description. So that permission to move out of our constructed habitual reality and begin to feel like I, this body, me, my personality, all of the connections to life, life itself embodied as me and you, that really we are a collective. I mean, we've all heard about how we're all made up of maybe 90% of bacteria or something in terms of the gajillion cells that we have and how many of them are bacteria and how many of them are like, I don't know, human embryo kinds of cells. You know, we are an internal collective of all different kinds of microorganisms. Some of you may have come to the talk last week with Dr. Edison DeMello, who wrote a book with the striking title, Bloated, about gut health and mindfulness and so forth. You know, that talk in and of itself, wow, okay, we realize we are an internal collective as well as an external collective in this world. And it's just liberating because it allows you to question, like, whose rules are you following in this life, right? When I think of Sila, when I think of ethical living, when I think of the precepts, we call them the precepts, but they're like trainings in mindfulness, trainings in not killing. Our little 3-year-old grandson visited yesterday, and he doesn't come here very often, so I was kind of reacquainting him with this house, and we went into the bedroom and there was a spider on the bed, and he looked at it worriedly and said, he's just about to turn 3, and said, that's a spider. And I said, yes. And he looked at me and said, take it outside. It never crossed his mind to squish it, you know, or to kill it in any way. He's been raised, you take it outside. So living, I mean, whether it's not killing, not stealing, not lying, not misusing, not abusing people through sexuality, not abusing substances and intoxicating ourselves into mindlessness. Those are just really briefly the trainings that we undertake, but they are a beautiful guide if you consider them as trainings in what? Not just trainings in being good, but trainings in awareness. And I spoke at the end of the meditation about the pleasure of stillness, the pleasure of an out breath, the pleasure when you let a train of thought go, when you're able to sort of come back to, you know, stepping back, relaxing, just being, the pleasure of that. And it's a healthy, beautiful pleasure that I want all of us to indulge in freely all day long. Why not? So let's see what else I really want to share with you before it's your turn. I love what the teacher Thich Nhat Hanh says about consciousness, that consciousness is a game of hide and seek. And doesn't it feel like that there are times when it's so clear, everything is so clear. I look out the window and all I see are the spiky green leaves of this weird tree, sort of half bush, half tree. And then there's other times when it's just not clear at all. Whatever the it is, it's just not clear. And so if you think of consciousness as a game of hide and seek, I would say attention too, you know, sometimes here, sometimes gone. And what's most important, I think, is to use meditation, to embrace meditation as a way to reconnect with the wisdom of our hearts. And I don't have the quote here with me, but the indigenous plant healer, her name was Josefa, I forget her last name, from Mexico. She was talking about how some days she sees the plants' communication with each other, that she sees them like these diaphanous, transparent, silvery threads hung between the plants, kind of thrumming with energy. And she's describing this beautiful thing. And then she says later, but that's not something you can see every day. That's not something, your heart has to be open. That's for the days when the heart is open. The heart plays hide and seek, you know, with its openness and closedness. Like, do you know what a sensitive plant is? Now, it's a plant, it's from the mimosa family. And if you touch it, it's got little leaves branched out like this, let's say. And if you touch it, they close like that to protect themselves. So, and you can just keep doing it and it'll keep doing it. Although at a certain point you wonder if you're torturing the plant and you stop. But we're like that too. We are sensitive plants. And when someone touches us in a way that triggers fear or anger or sadness, or, you know, what happens to our heart, it just shuts and closes, and that's okay. It's protection. It's protection. And meditation can help us release little by little, by little by little, until we have, you know, this beautiful open heart that can embrace so much of life, so much of life. And yeah. And when our hearts are open like that, this was the last thing I wanted to say. When our hearts are open like that, we're not alone. You've all had moments of experiencing this. You can't be alone in moments like that. When the heart is so wide open, everything is present, all of life. And then these experiments and gathering data about are plants conscious and how conscious are they and what do they know and how do they learn, you realize in those moments of the really wide open heart, oh my gosh, everything has consciousness. It's everywhere. It infuses and suffuses all life. As my first teacher used to say in his inimitably unpoetic Dharma sound bites, he said, it's like cookie dough and cookies. We're all made of the same substance. Life is the cookie dough and we are the cookies. So I'll leave you with that delicious metaphor and open up to any kinds of questions or reflections that you may have from your life this week. And the connection that I was making between COP26 and what I'm talking about, of course, is the connection of loving all life and taking care of all life and being aware of the sensitivity, the consciousness, and the importance of all life. And I'll just close once again, second closing, with a quote that from one of my writing teachers. He said, it gave me so much encouragement, this quote. He said, a person's true voice is always worth hearing. And that quote, I think, a person's true voice is always worth hearing. The voice of the forests is always worth hearing. The voice of the oceans, the voice of the planet is really worth hearing. And so this is how, in my mind, at least what I was sharing with you connects to the care we need to take of this beautiful, beautiful earth. So if you have a question or a comment, please feel free to unmute yourself and speak. Kathy can call on you, whichever comes first.
I just want to say, Trudy, before I don't see any hands raised, what a beautiful Dharma talk. Oh, that really touched my soul with all the plants and just the energy of it. And I just got the new book, and I'm going to put the link, and I put the link to the quote you gave in there. I Googled it and found it. But Paul Hawkins' new book is out, Regeneration, which is gorgeous. And it's like ending the climate change in one generation. And it's like just little article after article after article of things that are being done in the oceans, with the plants, with the animals. So I highly recommend that book to everyone. It's gorgeous.
Put that one in the chat too, Kathy. And I think in his previous book, Drawdown, he did a lot of that as well. But the thing about regeneration, which I have not read yet, which I do need to read.
It's huge. It's hard to read in one sitting.
Yeah, no, it's not like a novel, I know. Not that I could read those in one sitting either, but I think the distinction that I understand about it is that it's also talking about the need for different consciousness and awareness. And so that's what we're also talking about today.
Yeah. I'll put the link in there. It's beautiful. I have an 8-year-old here at Lama that I've been reading it with, even. Like, we just look at the pictures of like the turtles and we read little bits. I pick, so it's for all ages. I highly recommend it. So yeah, feel free to raise your hand in the thing or put a question in the chat. Yeah. Sherry, go ahead. I see your hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, Trudy, thank you so much. This whole idea is really exciting to me. It really turns me on. And it fits with a couple of experiences this week that I had, actually. One is that I've been trying to find some kind of program for my son. He's a young adult with autism, and we searched and searched, and none of the traditional kind of programs seemed to fit. And then just at the what felt like last minute, we found a program where the individuals actually get to work in a renewable farms context, and they use like fish ponds and the water from the fish that have like the nutrients, the pee and the poop from the fish. They feed the plants with it, and they get to harvest. And they have like some critters running around, ducks and chickens and some cats, which all coexist. And it just helped my heart so much to know, and the people running it are all into our interaction, all life, and thinking about helping people look towards the future. So that's one thing. And the second thing is with the precept of I will abstain from killing or taking life. I kind of am a little bit unclear, and I could use some guidance with pets that are like really, really old and have so many medical problems. And the precept doesn't say, well, don't take life unless it would help you to go on vacation financially, or or I won't take live unless it gives me relief from going to let the dog out 1,500 times in a day. And you know, I know some people probably wouldn't even be able to afford to keep their pets at the level that a couple of ours are. And I just don't know sometimes where the fine line is. Like, they're happy with all this medication and procedures and labs and whatever. But the cat's purring and the dog's wagging his tail. Even though he's blind, he can still somehow shadow us. And I know one time during one of our meetings, there was a conversation about what happens if I have an infestation of roaches or rats. But I just find myself struggling with that, and I don't know if you have any wisdom.
I really don't. I don't have any pet wisdom. I haven't been able to have any pets since I came to California because of travel much to teach. But other people, I really encourage other people to respond to Sherry in the chat. I mean, to me, it's a decision that you make maybe with your vet, with the animal's doctors, when there's diminishing returns for all the treatments and expenses. And it's a decision you make with yourself. You know, at some point it may simply be too much, but I don't have any, certainly not any advice, except that I do respect your honesty about how hard it is and the feelings that you're having of both appreciating that they still can enjoy bits of their life, and yet how much that's eroding your enjoyment of yours. And so, yeah, I just appreciate your honesty. And I hope other people will say something to you in the chat a little more than I can. Yeah, Rick.
Correct. Yeah, go ahead. I see your hand raised, Rick. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Rick, you're still muted. No, there you go.
Sorry about that.
There.
Trudy, one of the nice things about the documentary you mentioned is it seems to offer some objective proof of what's so often alluded to in the practice and theory. Do you, or did you struggle ever in your journey with the inability to distinguish between what you want to believe versus what you believe? And do documentaries like this one help you marry those things?
Well, you know me, I'm going to ask you first why you're asking me that.
Because I have trouble making
not
that
I
distinction.
won't talk about myself. I'm just curious for you.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear you because that's often a struggle for me. I wonder sometimes, am I just buying into this because I need to and want to? And is that enough? Or is there something objective about this that I'm tapping into? That's an ongoing.
Buying into what?
The truth of what's alluded to here.
Oh, you mean the Dharma and things like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, I think I've struggled with that a lot in my life, but in a much less maybe elevated way, in the sense that my struggle was with things like, could I believe my husband was cheating on me when I definitely did not want to believe that? Could I believe the evidence that I could look back and see that I did not see at all at the time because I didn't want to? You know, that's where my mind goes when you ask me about my experience. I've never, ever, that I can remember, sort of not believed the teachings because I was practicing them. I never learned them as a scholar or as a philosophical thing. You know, I was always practicing them and seeing, oh yeah, it works. Like they say, you know, in the 12th step, it works if you work it. If you do it and practice it, you find out. And everything didn't work for me, just like everything doesn't work for everybody. And that's why we have to practice and see what works and go in the direction that which works being that which helps us stay present and offer that attention, which is the beginning of devotion to ourselves and to this life. I don't know if that helps you. Yeah.
Thank you, it does.
Yeah. So Shooty, you want to unmute yourself?
Hi, yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you for this. I cried the whole time and I was very grateful to be able to do that. But I was thinking about the question that was just asked and how a lot of these perspectives for me, how I make sense of them. I'm an anthropologist, and so a lot of the material, and my research is in Latin America, and so a lot of the material that I've been focused on, in anthropology, the goal is to what are the people that we're working with, what's their point of view, and how can we denaturalize our perspective to accept that there are multiple versions of what is quote normal, right? And a lot of so there's this book that I pulled out actually as you were talking. It's called How Forests Think. And it's written by an anthropologist in Ecuador, and his perspective is well, if we can talk about how we see other beings, but how do they see us, right? So it starts from the beginning. The description is there's a jaguar, right? And he says, someone tells him, sleep face up. If a jaguar comes, he'll see you can look back at him and he won't bother you. If you sleep face down, he'll think you're prey and he'll attack. And he says, if Juanico, this person was saying, a jaguar sees you as being capable of looking back, a self like himself, a you, he'll leave you alone. But if he should come to you to see you as prey and it, then you may well become dead meat. So the argument is then, well, how other kinds of beings see us matters. And so thinking about the notion that there's a particular kind of consciousness and multiple beings also kind of decenters us as the center, right? And reframes there's multiple lines of vision that are happening. And so I think for me, this kind of thinking has helped me recognize I'm being viewed too, I'm being engaged too by someone else from a different perspective, by non-humans, by potential plants, and even by rocks, right? So that has helped me reconceptualize some of this stuff, that it's not just me doing the same. I don't know if that helps, but it helps me.
Well, it's beautiful because it's really talking about being receptive in a deep way and in a more expanded way than we usually think of being receptive. And it also helps, any way that helps us decenter the self as the sort of omnipotent controlling agent of our life is good because that's an illusion.
Yeah, and it's also the argument that this is one of the ways we can respond to helping our world by decentering the human as
absolutely,
and positioning ourselves within this ecosystem of also being seen.
Yeah, which is of course, it's kind of ironic. It's science is sort of coming in this field is coming back to indigenous wisdom that's been known thousands and thousands of years. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And maybe Kathy, you can put in the chat how forests think.
How forests think toward an anthropology beyond the human.
Sure, I'll find that and put it in too.
Yeah, if people are interested.
It's a pretty can be a little dense, but it's thoughtful.
Yeah.
Okay, we're forewarned. It's scholarly. Meredith.
Hi, thank you so much. That was astounding and beautiful, and it's so reassuring. There are a bunch of things I want to say. I'll try to keep it simple. First of all, thank you for reminding us of let it be, just let it be, because I still argue with. These days, I'm aware of carrying a lot of anger. and to bring let it be, not just to the anger, but on my defenses and criticisms of being angry. And that really helps me to be patient. However, you know, because for me, impatience carries a lot of anger. Hurry up, do it better, do it yesterday, all that. So thank you so much for that. I love that phrase, let it be, because let go, I get tangled on. I can't, I'm going to, this is crazy, it's too hard.
Well, there was a famous song about it. You might want to play it for yourself.
I know. Then I go tripping off in the song and blah. But anyway, so thank you. And not anyway, it's all important. And just the beauty even doesn't cover it, of the intelligence of everybody, everything. One thing it reminds me of is, I will say, I was a little girl who, I never saw fairies, but I always knew they were around. I made houses for them for years and years. And when I was a preschool teacher, I showed the little kids where they live. And to me, that just means, for whatever reason, I was sensitive to some, you know, I think most kids are. Kids believe, I think, this is how I have experienced it, that everything's alive. Everything, stones and toys and, you know, stuff under the bed, and, you know, it's all alive. It gets up at night and dances around and has parties and, you know, leaves notes or is, you know, mischievous. And it's supposed to be childish, but I don't think it's just childish. I think it's true. You know, I'll just stick my old neck out there and say, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's, well, it's like it feels true.
It definitely feels true. And that's often a lot more true than I think it's true in my experience. And it's very, very, very humbling to hear about the trees, you know, and the plants and the little pea shoot. You know, it's like, just who do I think I am? And, you know, there's a big thought anyway, but I would love to study with the plant healer from Mexico.
Well, you can look up different references and look up Monica's work. You can find it all online. I mean, not all of it, but you can find it online. And I think Kathy has put some information in the chat that you should check out too, Meredith. Thank you.
I think so too.
Bob, you want to unmute yourself, Bob?
Good morning. Hi, thanks, Trudy.
You got muted again somehow.
Yeah, sorry. There we go. Try again. Thanks. When she talked about decentering, it reminded me of an experience I had. I don't think it's exactly what she's talking about, but when I first moved to California, you knew me right before I moved. And I came out here, 28 years ago. And it really rattled me because I felt, you know, I lost my work, I lost my friends, I lost my barber, my car mechanic, all of it, you know, my house. And I couldn't find myself. And I got depressed. It was rattling, actually. And then one day I had an experience in which I realized that I was just the intersection of all the people that I had known and loved and who loved me. In that moment, I remembered something. I think it was Alan Watts. I used to listen to on the radio, the Buddhist teacher. He said that we thought of ourself as like a suitcase that we could pack, that we carried around with us, and we always had it. And we knew what was in it and what size it was. And I realized that's what I thought. I thought that I brought myself out here. And when I got here and I lost all of those connections, I couldn't find myself. And so that somehow that realization was profoundly helpful, because I suddenly realized that I had that the concept I had of myself was actually problematic. And then realizing that I was this intersection of, I was thinking people, but, I think it includes the trees too, like all of it.
Yeah.
And that not having that, it was liberating to have to blow up that idea. So it was painful, but it was liberating. So.
Yeah, it's really true. And in those moments when you realize that you're that intersection, you're not alone. You don't feel alone anymore, do you?
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I'm connected to whatever.
Yeah. No, I can totally resonate, because I too left my known world of all my colleagues and friends and everything, actually. So, and it's very disorienting. And I remember at the time knowing, because I was already a teacher, and I remember knowing this is spiritually really good, but emotionally really tough. Spiritually good because you get to experience being no one when you've been someone in a community.
Yeah.
And then I just wanted to say something to Charles, who put something in the chat. I don't think we have to worry about being murderers when we eat, crunch a piece of lettuce, although it definitely crossed my mind when I listened to her. I mean, life eats life and survives that way. But what she said was really interesting. She said, nobody has ever questioned my data in the sense of looking and saying, that your experiment was wrong or your science isn't accurate. She said, it's all completely sort of unassailable. She said, but so many people question my work because they can't believe it. They can't conceive of it. It can't be, is what they say. That cannot be. So that was interesting too, to me, because that which cannot be may be. We don't know. So we just, to me, if you have that kind of healthy intelligence skepticism, like Charles was manifesting, maybe just keeping an open mind to and seeing, we don't know, we don't.
Trudy? Yeah.
Yes, Charles.
Yeah, okay. I think you're misreading what I was intending to say.
Oh, okay. Well, clarify for me.
Yeah, I accept everything that you said in all of our studies as correct, but it doesn't in any way impute to things an animate consciousness or ability to reason or feel, because things respond to stimuli in the world, whether it be light, sounds, chemicals, whatever it is. That's obvious. They do, things grow, plants close at night, all kinds of things. Things go to sleep. But to personify everything and say, oh, they're talking to each other, how you doing today? One tree to the next.
No. In fairness, she doesn't say that. She says they communicate, and she makes a distinction between the functions you're describing, which are instinctual patterned, and learning. And she said, all she's saying is plants can learn.
Well, there's no doubt about that, but that may be instinctual as well. The only thing I'm thinking, I have a completely open mind, and I'm not poo-pooing anything, but the only thing that I caution against is taking it to an illogical extreme.
I'm with you.
It doesn't.
And I'm guilty of that.
Yeah. And I'm not accusing you of that. I'm not accusing anybody of that.
I think I do.
Too many people do.
No, go ahead. It's true. That's what.
I think the reason you said people resist this kind of research is because it's outside their comfort zone. It's a little frightening maybe to think those things. People don't want to hear it,
Exactly.
But if you have, I would hope, an evolved intellect or inquiry or curiosity, you'll be open to those kinds of things. So it's not a matter of right or wrong. It's a matter of we don't know.
Exactly.
But to impute to Yeah, I mean, even I think Meredith said that he believes everything. I don't believe a rock. If I take a rock, I don't think it's going to feel a darn thing. And it's been here a billion years
Find
longer
out,
than I have.
Charles. I don't know if we're going to find out in our lifetime, but we will find out.
We don't know.
Anyway,
And,
thank you.
faith is a wonderful thing, and faith gives us answers that we can't prove.
Yeah.
So that's a good.
Thank
I don't want to capture the time here. Thank you.
No, I'm happy to have you capture the time. It's just that we've run out of it. That's the
Okay, no
problem.
problem. No problem.
So
Thank you, Charles. Trudy, I want to ask really fast. A few people have been asking me privately and on the chat what Monica's last name is.
Gagliano, Gagliano. And I want to encourage everybody to come to a breakout group. Are you doing breakout groups today, Kathy? Yeah, because the breakout
Yes,
groups
I
are
am.
a place where you can continue these conversations. Like, I wish I could continue my conversation with Charles, but I can't go to a breakout group because, anyway, I have to leave right after this. But it's a place where you can also just sort of get to know each other, be beyond.
Yeah, we're
Zoom.
gonna have little small groups, and we'll talk about the plants, and we'll also talk about some of the animal questions that Sherry brought up. So stay with us.
And you can bring it, you can bring whatever you'd like to your group. You don't have to, it's not like circumscribed topics. So let's just sit for not even a minute together because it's already 12:30. At the end of our time together, spent listening to teachings and practicing meditation and sharing our lives, and just take a look and see what has been useful or beneficial to you during this time. And then, kind of think of it as an act of imagination, just offering the goodness of your practice to all beings everywhere without exception, to all the plants and all the animals and all the elements and all the opinions and all the philosophies and those who hold them. May all beings learn to see themselves as a collective, a sangha, a community, kinship with all life. Imagine the joy that would reign on the planet when people can wake up and be collaborative and cooperative in this way. Jim? Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for your practice, for your presence. Just happy to see you all. You can unmute yourselves and say hi, goodbye. And
Thank
we'll see
you.
you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Trudy.
Thank
Bye,
you
Trudy.
so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Trudy, thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye.
Take
Next
good
week.
care.
For small
Thank
groups.
Charles, I really appreciate it. See you next week.
I know. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I like your owl.
Thank you.